In the closing years of World War II, while the skies of Europe burned and cities were reduced to rubble, Nazi Germany unveiled a weapon so advanced that it seemed to come from another world. It was not a tank, nor a plane, nor a gun. It was a rocket, a weapon that could strike without warning, faster than sound, from hundreds of miles away. Its name was the V2, and it would become both a symbol of terror and the dawn of the space age. This is the untold story of Hitler's secret superweapon. The V2 rocket, officially known as the Vergeltungswaffe II, meaning Retribution Weapon II, was part of Hitler's desperate attempt to turn the tide of the war through technological superiority. By 1943, Germany was losing on all fronts. The Allies had gained control of the air, the Soviets were pushing westward, and the German cities were under constant bombardment. Hitler demanded a wonder weapon, a miracle that would strike fear into his enemies and prove that Germany was still a force to be reckoned with. What his engineers delivered was unlike anything the world had ever seen. The story began at Peenemünde, a secret research facility hidden on the Baltic coast. There, under the leadership of a young and brilliant engineer named Wernher von Braun, German scientists and engineers worked on perfecting the dream of rocketry, something that had fascinated von Braun since childhood. But under the Nazi regime, that dream took on a far darker purpose. The goal was no longer space exploration, it was vengeance. The V2 stood over 14 meters tall, weighed nearly 13 tons, and could travel at speeds exceeding 5,000 kilometers per hour. It was the world's first ballistic missile, capable of reaching targets more than 300 kilometers away. Once launched, it soared into the edge of space before plunging back down to Earth at supersonic speed. Unlike traditional bombs, which could be heard approaching, the V2 struck without warning. There was no defense, no siren, no chance to hide. One moment there was silence, the next, an explosion that leveled city blocks. London, Antwerp, and other Allied cities became the targets of this terrifying new weapon. The psychological effect of the V2 was immense. Civilians described the strikes as sudden acts of divine wrath. You never heard the missile coming, only the detonation. Newspapers called it the sound of death itself. For many, the V2 symbolized the terrifying power of science turned into destruction. It was not just a bomb, it was the future of warfare, decades ahead of its time. But behind the technological brilliance of the V2 was a story of immense human suffering. To meet the massive production demands of Hitler's war machine, the Nazis moved V2 manufacturing to an underground complex known as Mittelwerk. There, in horrific conditions, tens of thousands of prisoners from the Mittelbau-Dora concentration camp were forced to work as slave laborers. They lived and died in darkness, building the rockets that would rain death on Allied cities. Historians estimate that more people died building the V2 than were killed by it in combat. For all its technological genius, the weapon was built upon a foundation of horror. When the V2 finally entered service in 1944, it was a weapon both awe-inspiring and tragic. It was too little, too late to change the outcome of the war. Though thousands were launched, they could not stop the advancing Allied armies. Still, the V2 left a mark far greater than its immediate military effect. It was the first man-made object to reach the edge of space. It showed humanity that we could, indeed, leave Earth, and that our greatest scientific achievements could also become our greatest nightmares. As the war drew to a close, Allied forces raced to capture the remaining V2s and, more importantly, the minds that created them. The Americans, under a secret program known as Operation Paperclip, brought Wernher von Braun and many of his team to the United States. The Soviets did the same, seizing parts, plans, and scientists from the ruins of Germany. What began as a Nazi weapon of vengeance would soon become the foundation of the Cold War space race. In America, von Braun and his team worked for the US Army, developing rockets that would eventually evolve into the Redstone and Saturn V, the rocket that took mankind to the moon. In the Soviet Union, captured V2 technology led to the creation of the R-7, which would launch the first satellite, Sputnik, into orbit. The irony of history is that the same weapon that once brought terror to London would one day send humans into space. The V2 rocket is remembered today as both a marvel and a warning. It represented the cutting edge of human ingenuity and the depths of human cruelty. It proved that science, in the wrong hands, can become a weapon of mass terror. And it marked the beginning of a new era, one where the line between war and progress would forever be blurred. In the museums of Europe and the United States, surviving V2s stand tall as silent witnesses to history. They are beautiful and terrible all at once, a symbol of humanity's potential for both creation and destruction. The legacy of the V2 rocket stretches far beyond the battlefields of World War II. It shaped the future of warfare, the future of space exploration, and the story of our species itself. From the underground tunnels of Mittelwerk to the launch pads of NASA, the journey of the V2 is a story of ambition, tragedy, and transformation. It reminds us that progress often comes at a price, and that even in humanity's darkest moments, the sparks of innovation can light the path to the stars.